Good evening and welcome to NYNJPA Weather, your weather source for the Northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm meteorologist Stephen DiMartino. Tranquil weather conditions are going to be in store from tonight all the way on through this weekend due to high pressure that is currently established over much of eastern Canada and now over much of the eastern United States. This high pressure center will basically remain in place through this weekend, driving in a rather cool air mass for the most part for the northern Mid-Atlantic. While most locations over the southern Mid-Atlantic and the southeast warm up into the 60s and even 70s, our region will remain in the 50s. So New York City and Philadelphia, if you're looking for 60-degree temperatures, you might want to drive a little bit further south into Washington and Baltimore. As for the rest of the region, the good news is that at least the weather conditions will remain dry with no rainfall expected throughout this entire week and into this weekend. This is my favorite weather satellite picture. It's called the water vapor satellite picture, and the reason why is because you can actually see the movement of the water vapor in the atmosphere. What we have in place is our polar jet stream that has a deep trough developing over much of the Rockies and the northern plains, with basically driving in cold air from western Canada into the northern plains. Temperatures right now are slightly below normal, but it's nothing compared to what's going to be setting up later on next week and for the end of November. We are looking at a major Arctic blast for much of the United States. But I'll get to that later. Let's focus on the next couple of days first. Notice some interesting things though. We have a very impressive ridge that is developing over the Great Lakes and parts of Ontario, Canada, down through the Mississippi River Valley. And then we have our upper level low, our ocean storm from the past few days, blocking this ridge. It's not allowing this ridge to build into the northern Atlantic and the northeast. The result, instead of above normal temperatures, we're staying near normal. And this is important because what's happening is that the ridge is being squeezed between the two troughs. So eventually this ridge is going to collapse. And that's what I have in the green here. Basically what's happening is that this ridge is going to split off, collapse, and as a result, the really warm air that is over the Mississippi River Valley, Tennessee River Valley, and the southeast won't ever reach the northern Mid-Atlantic. Sure, it'll warm up a bit, temperatures in the mid to upper 50s, but nothing drastic. The drastic warm air, well, that's going to be down towards Washington, D.C. Our upper level low is going to kick out into the Atlantic. Our ridge slides, but it's nowhere near as intense as it was before, over the East Coast, and then exits quickly. By next week, we have a very interesting setup developing. Let's take a look at the European model guidance. This is the European model guidance from ECWMF, which basically you can find at the Penn State EWOL website, an excellent website for model data. And what I want to show here is that at 500 millibars, we have basically a huge trough throughout much of the eastern United States. But notice we're on what's called the eastern edge of this trough. What does that mean? Well, we have warm air that's going to be to our southeast, and our very cold air masses are going to be over the Great Lakes. That's going to put the northern Mid-Atlantic in what we call the battle zone. And in that battle zone, we have a strong disturbance that's moving towards the Mid-Atlantic by Wednesday morning. What I'm expecting is that an area low pressure is going to intensify as it moves towards Virginia and eventually the Delmarva Peninsula and produce moderate to heavy rain throughout much of the region on Wednesday. Why is it important to point this out? Well, when we head towards the winter, this might be an interesting setup to keep an eye on. If the polar cold front happens to have stronger polar air or even Arctic air behind this cold front, the northern Mid-Atlantic is going to sit right in the middle of what will be a battle zone between some very warm air and some very, very cold air. And if that sets up, well, usually that leads to snow, ice, and rain, or basically a mess for the entire northern Mid-Atlantic. The good news is that this time the air masses are a little bit too warm and the situation is not as dynamic, so we don't have to worry about that too much. All we're going to be looking for with this storm on Wednesday is some heavy rain. But it's just something to keep an eye on as we move forward into the winter months. Thank you for trusting in NYNJPA Weather as your weather source for the northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm meteorologist Stephen DiMartino. Have an excellent evening.